Everyone loves a laugh until it arrives like a metronome. A tiny knot deep inside was telling jokes no one else could hear. The first laugh stopped the room. Not because it was big, but because it wasn't about anything. No joke hung in the air, no friend made a face. It arrived like a ringtone with no owner, 2 bright bursts and a sigh, and then the crayon started moving again as if someone had pressed play. "Sweetie," the teacher said, finger hovering over the intercom. "Everything okay?" A second laugh came while the nurse was still unwrapping a thermometer. This one had timing, almost too clean, 10 seconds after the first, the way a metronome forgives no one. The child's eyes didn't sparkle. They watched a corner of the ceiling as if someone there had said the funniest plain thing in the world. By the time I met them in clinic, the parents had a folder of notes and a phone held like a confession. At night, too, the mother said. She scrolled to a recording and handed me the rectangle of light. In the quiet of my office, the sound felt wrong, like a smile pressed into the wrong mold. 2 bursts, a catch of breath. Another, later. The father looked at his lap while it played. The boy traced the wood grain on the exam table with 1 finger and didn't mind the grown-ups talking. Seizures can look like many things, I said. Sometimes they look like laughter. The word landed with a soft thud, neither welcome nor refused. I booked a bed in our monitoring unit and an MRI and promised to tell the truth, even the parts one wished were softer. On the way out, they asked if they should keep recording at night. Yes, I said. Let's give the sound a name. The school nurse's office had the exact smell every school nurse's office has, sanitizer over old paper over grape ice pups. Posters on the wall promised bravery points for flu shots and kindness points for everything else. A cot by the window had a crease down its middle like it was built to fold. The nurse kept her voice steady the way professionals in small rooms do. He laughed twice in the classroom and then again here. No fever. No one was being silly. He wasn't upset. He just left. The boy swung his feet from the cot and looked at the cartoon lungs on the poster as if measuring them against his own. He could read. His mother told me he had sounded out everything on the cereal box since he was 3, and he took instructions literally, sometimes to the point of trouble. When the poster said, "Take 3 deep REDHS," he took 3, exactly 3, then waited for further rules. We noticed it at night first, the father said. Worry sketched tidy in the lines beside his mouth. We thought bad dream. Then it kept happening. The pediatrician wasn't sure. Said keep a log. You did, I said, glancing at the folder. Dates, times, asterisks next to longer bursts, question marks next to sighs. Thank you. He smiled in the tired way people do when thanked for something they'd rather not have learned how to do. On the way out, the boy paused at a poster with a smiling tooth holding hands with a toothbrush. That's not how hands work, he said, and I liked him for that. Our epilepsy monitoring unit is a quiet floor where time is measured in wires and patience. A camera stares at a bed. Paper records every twitch as a small mountain range. Families arrive with suitcases full of pajamas and snacks and hopeful boredom. We ask them to do what feels rude at home. Notice everything. Laughs without jokes. Blinks without dust. Sighs that arrive like punctuation when no sentence needed them. Gelastic, I said on admission night, writing the word in block letters on a whiteboard and underlining it once. It just means the laugh kind. The word isn't the point, the behavior is. Is it dangerous? The mother asked. She meant, is it the beginning of something bigger? Right now it's information, I said. We're here to catch it while we're looking. Seizures can come from many places. If they start deep, the surface wires are shy. The camera and the timing matter. The MRI matters. Your notes matter most. The boy picked at the edge of an EEG sticker until the tech gave him a gentle look, and he stopped. He named his electrodes in order, ... and seemed pleased to have so many dots on his head. The junior tech knew enough to keep his enthusiasm unhidden, winked at the boy and said, "You'll be a radio," which is not wrong and also not right, and the boy considered the physics of it and nodded. Night 1, I told the family, which is doctor for we might not see what we need yet. Please don't measure me by the first hours." The boy went to sleep with his face tilted toward the camera like he was trying to be polite to it. Nothing happened that first night, which is a kind of happening. Everyone slept badly. Morning coffee tasted like cardboard. The mother apologized for the quiet, as if that were a failure. "Don't," I said. "We're not on a deadline. We're on a truth line." Midday, the boy laughed. 2 bursts, a sigh. The tech pressed a button to mark the event. The junior, flipping through the live tracing with the earnest speed of someone who wants everything to be obvious, murmured, "Could be behavioral." I watched the mother's face fall as if someone had pulled a rug she hadn't realized she was standing on. I felt the sentence rise in my throat, the easy one, the smoothing one, the one that erases uncertainty by erasing the person. I swallowed it. "We don't know yet," I said, loud enough for both of them. "We don't label a thing by how it looks if we can't prove where it came from. It matters because you say it matters." The boy, oblivious to the adult scandal he caused, asked if he could have the blue popsicle or if the green was better for science. We picked blue. That evening I sat with the text and scrubbed through the tape. The laugh arrived. The tracing shifted a little, not the way a storm cracks the sky, more the way a breeze forgets itself and moves the leaves anyway. "Mark it," I said. "Don't call it a behavior. Call it an event." He nodded and changed the label, and the small dignity of that keystroke felt larger than it should. By day 2, the laughter bursts were more frequent. 10 seconds, 20. Sometimes the mouth moved without the eyes, sometimes the eyes locked to a corner of the ceiling as though the funniest person lived in drywall. He never remembered them. He'd blink and ask if it was snack time, because snack is a better measure of life than most numbers. The surface EEG, the wires on his scalp, showed hints the way a window shows a storm that's happening 2 houses over. Subtle shifts, a smear of activity that knew how to hide. Seizures can recruit more of the brain over time, I told the parents plainly. Sometimes they stay as little islands. Sometimes they build bridges. We want to catch it before it does construction. The teacher emailed me through the family's consented portal access. He melted down after the second burst. Not his usual. We called it the sillies at first. It's not that. I wrote back with gratitude and a promise. We'd keep her in the loop. We'd find a word that explained this to other adults without shaming him. I carry a note from my first year, kept in the single folder that isn't electronic. Thank you for caring. Next time, please do better. I had told a family, probably fine, and the rest of that story put me in a stairwell after rounds, not trusting my voice for a week. My mentor sat with me and said the thing that built a better doctor in me than grades ever did: name the uncertainty. Don't hide inside it. So I named it again in this room. I can't promise anything about outcomes today. I can promise we will not wave this away because it looks gentle. We'll chase an answer. The boy asked if the MRI machine was a tunnel or a rocket. It's loud like a construction site, I said, but no dust. We put on headphones and pretend it's a weird party. Can I bring my stuffed fox? He asked. Yes. We'll put it next to you and give it pretend ear protection too. The MRI drew a dot in the middle of everything. A pea-sized knot of tissue tucked against the hypothalamus by the third ventricle, a place the brain uses to measure hunger and temperature and hormones and the difference between night and not night. The radiologist scrolled slices like turning pages and stopped on the one that pointed. There, she said, a pencil eraser on the glass, circling a thing that most eyes without training would call nothing. Looks like a hamartoma. I took a breath and waited to see if my voice would behave. A hamartoma is a tiny benign piece of brain that didn't read the map right when it was forming, I said to the parents in our conference room. It isn't a tumor in the grow and spread way, but it can act like an electrical mischief maker. Gelastic seizures, laughing seizures, often come from exactly here. The father leaned over the screen as if proximity could make it less steep. You can't fix it? The good news, I said, and it was not counterfeit, is that we have options. Medicines sometimes help, but with these, they usually don't help enough. I spread the printouts of our surgical conference notes. 2 paths, similar destination. 1. Laser interstitial thermal therapy, gentle language for a targeted burn delivered through a thin fiber, guided by the MRI's map. The other, endoscopic disconnection, a tiny camera, a delicate cut, severing the path the bad signals take to the rest of the brain. Different tools. The goal is to stop this small knot from talking to the parts that turn laughter into a seizure. What about the other things the mother asked? Eyes on the whiteboard where someone had drawn hormones, memory, temperature inside a cautious rectangle. He's 6. He still believes the moon follows the car. We worry about those too, I said. This area is near the body's control room for hormones and heat. The surgeons aim to be precise. There are risks, and we name them now so they don't surprise you later. Most children do well. We would bring in our endocrine team to check labs before and after. We'd map as we go. We don't pretend it's nothing. We also don't let fear be the only voice in the room. The boy, having listened without being asked to, asked a question I wish I'd had the wisdom to ask at his age. Will the laser hurt me? You'll be asleep, I said. You'll wake up with a small bandage and a lot of people who want to know your favorite popsicle flavor. Blue, he said, as if we hadn't covered that, and then, can I name it? The laser, I asked. He nodded, solemn as a mayor. Of course, I said. It works better with a name. Sunbeam, he said decisively, and I wrote it down next to the word LITT as if the chart would read humor and become kinder. We gave them time to think because time is part of consent. The clock, of course, had other ideas. The bursts were creeping closer together. The teacher's emails grew shorter, then longer, then short again, as if hope and fatigue took turns drafting them. His attention fogged in the afternoon. He snapped at a classmate and then cried about snapping. His mother mentioned, out of nowhere and therefore exactly where it belonged, he's had a little hair on his arms, and he's taller. She looked at me like I could make biology choose a gentler calendar. Sometimes, I said, that knock can nudge hormones earlier. We'll check. We won't miss it. We tried a medicine that sometimes trims seizures' edges. For a handful of days the bursts shrank, then surged back as if insulted we'd tried to bargain. The boy told me he didn't like how the pill made his inside face feel, which may be the most accurate review of side effects I've heard. We lowered the dose, then stopped. The logic of the decision was simple. The feeling of it wasn't. His parents stood in my doorway on a Friday with the smell of rain on their coats. We want him back, the father said, but not at any cost. Then we make the cost as small as we can, I said. And we stop the thing that keeps pulling him away. We booked an OR slot. The surgeon met them in a room with too bright art and explained in measured sentences how he would find a path that was safe enough to change and close enough to the culprit to matter. Our endocrine colleague drew blood and talked about numbers in friendly metaphors. An anesthesia nurse let the boy pick a sticker for the mask and wrote Sunbeam on the schedule next to his name with a smile she did not apologize for. The day before surgery, I watched one of the night recordings again in a stairwell because sometimes I need to hear the thing that brought a family to us to remember why they're trusting me to lead them away from it. 2 bursts, a sigh, silence, 2 more later. In the clip, someone, maybe Dad, whispered, "It's okay, buddy," to a room where nothing was actively wrong and everything was. I promised to the phone and the concrete and the handrail, which have heard stranger things, I'll earn your quiet. On the morning of, logistics tried to show off. A routine equipment check caught a wobble in a cooling unit we don't go without. We waited 30 anxious minutes for a replacement. The mother put on headphones and ignored 3 voicemails from school because she could not parent 2 timelines at once. The father stood up, sat down, stood up. The boy, unfazed, renamed all the fish in the waiting room aquarium and told the smallest one that school would be jealous of his field trip. I found a pen that still worked and wrote the consent in words that did not flatter me. We are taking a precise risk near a precise place to stop events that have been stealing your child. We will check hormone numbers, memory, and mood. We will not tell you we know more than we do. We will stop if the picture says stop. We will adjust if the map says move. We will not make promises we can't cash. The boy held my badge lanyard and read my name slowly, as if learning it would give him power over the day. Will there be popsicles? I have a reputation to uphold, I said. Yes. He looked at his mother's face and put his small hand on her wrist the way his father had placed his on mine in the ambulance bay in a different story, in a different town a decade ago. I'll be brave, he said. He did not say he was scared, and I did not ask him to. We walked to the pre-op doors where the art on the walls learned to be soothing by committee. The anesthesiologist knelt so her eyes were level with his and told him exactly how the mask would smell, bananas, by popular vote. The surgeon drew a small circle on a printed brain and a small dot inside it and said, "We will talk to this dot and ask it to be quiet." The dot looked so harmless on the page that I felt my old anger at small things that cause big harm stir, then sit back down, because anger is not what you bring into an OR. The mother kissed her son's forehead. The father told a joke so bad the boy rolled his eyes and blessedly laughed. It was real. We all heard the difference. "See you soon," I said, and meant it. They wheeled him away. The doors opened, and the laugh that wasn't joy stayed behind us like weather finally reported on. The family sat in 2 chairs that tried and failed to be comfortable. I sat with them for the first quiet minutes and did not try to fill them. Then I went to scrub in. The second part of the story begins where the hallway ends, under lights, next to numbers, with a team that feels bigger than its bodies. But before that, a vow in a stairwell, a dot on a screen, a name on a laser, a family that brought us phone recordings and asked us to turn them back into sleep. We would try to give their house silence again and teach them not to be afraid of it. Out in the world, a classroom learned to pause when it heard a laugh that didn't belong to a joke. In the unit upstairs, a paper mountain range waited to be less dramatic. On my whiteboard, I left the word we started with and circled it twice. Gelastic, laughter that isn't joy. Beside it, I wrote the word I wanted to say next week with a straight back and a clean conscience. Quiet. In the hallway outside the operating room, the replacement unit arrived with a rattle and a promise. The tech signed for it like it was a newborn he'd keep from drafts. "Cooling solid," he said. The delay had stretched 30 minutes into a kind of elastic that wanted to snap. The mother wore headphones. The father checked a weather app as if storms might matter in a room with no windows. The boy had already renamed every fish in the lobby aquarium and told the smallest one that school would be jealous of his field trip. On the board, next to his initials, the nurse had written the name he gave the laser, Sunbeam. In the anteroom, the surgeon drew the target on paper again and then into the air with his finger, as if it helped to mark the invisible. I scrubbed in. The anesthesiologist's voice was a metronome at the head of the bed, calm in the language of gases and breaths. The room hushed in that particular way operating rooms learn, not silence, but 1,000 little steadies. Before we began, the attendings revisited the line we'd drawn in conference. Conservative pass, reassess, then decide. We go stepwise, my mentor said, looking not at the screen but at me, as if to remind me that decisions have faces. We're here to turn down a voice, not erase a person. Family wants him back, not at any cost, I said, repeating the father's words the way you repeat coordinates so you do not forget where home is. Right, the surgeon said. We listened to the map and to the child, both. He called for the first check. The MRI overlay painted the column of the third ventricle in grayscale. The dot, the hamartoma, sat like a freckle where a freckle ought not to be. Imagine a room, he'd told the parents. We're aiming at a light switch inside the wall, not at the wall. Now, with the fiber poised, he added under his breath the sentence I've heard him say before small beginnings, bright on, not hot. The plan was laser ablation, laser interstitial thermal therapy, the kind of phrase that sounds like science fiction until you see it make a difference in a child. High-level version. A thin fiber slips to the target under the MRI's eye. Heat blooms where you tell it to. The map colors in as temperature rises, so you don't trespass into neighborhoods you mean to leave untouched. No lists, no how-to, just a room of people tuning a storm down from inside. "Coordinates," he murmured, and the room gave him numbers like a choir that knows its part. The live image stacked over the old one like tracing paper. When he was satisfied the tip sat where the dot sat, he nodded. "Energy on," the nurse confirmed. The thermal map flushed from cold blue toward warm yellow, stopping shy of the red that means don't. We watched the color bloom with the same deep attention you watch a sleeping child's chest rise the first night home after a long admission, counting, naming, not breathing for them but wanting to. On the monitor, the background rhythm, the electrical scribble, changed character, a train that had been arriving too often now delayed. The neurophysiologist marked the time, then the next 10 seconds, then the next, her pencil a metronome for the kind of suspense you cannot sell as drama to anyone who has not stood in a room like this. The surgeon lifted his foot off the pedal. "Pause," he said. "Check." We checked. Numbers hummed, unafraid. The dot on the map was paler, smaller, still itself, as if offended. "Again," he said, but softer, as if asking. "Energy on." The rose of heat grew a little more, not greedy. At the console, I wrote the times in a line I'd be able to read later when the room was no longer lit like a ship. When he stopped, the quiet inside the operating room felt like the beginning of a snowfall. "Conservative first pass complete," my mentor said. "Let's see what we have." The neurophysiologist nodded to us and to a screen that never speaks in plain English. "Trains down," she said. Intervals widening. She didn't say the laughter source is reluctant now, but that's what her voice carried. We stood there, an audience holding its applause, complicated by dread. The surgeon and the epileptologist at his elbow, my teacher, exchanged that look grown only of shared fights. "Go? Stop?" I thought of the father's sentence with its built-in guardrail. I thought of the boy naming the laser as if friendship would keep us from going too far. My mentor's rule rose up like a floor. Name the uncertainty. Don't hide inside it. The extent question is not trivial, the surgeon said, not for his benefit or mine, but because rooms remember what is said aloud. We could chase the margins harder and risk things we don't mess with casually. Or we pause, let biology show us what we bought, and come back if it calls us. He glanced at me, not needing my vote, but inviting it. I voted to be the kind of doctor who means it when saying we don't overpromise. Stepwise, my mentor answered, and the room nodded in a way that is as real as signatures. The last image printed in color and got clipped to the front of the chart like a postcard from inside. The surgeon withdrew the fiber with the same care used to enter, not a mapped trail out so much as lifting a needle from fabric you are determined not to snag. The site was closed in gestures so common they look like magic only to people who still want wands. Sunbeam behaved, the anesthesiologist said, smiling behind her mask. Sunbeam has a great bedside manner, I said, writing the time we all stopped holding our breath. We carried the news like a fragile cup, steady pace, no spill. In the waiting room, the parents stood up too fast and then pretended they had not. It went as planned, I said, and the words were not code for anything else. Small, precise. We didn't have to push beyond the map we drew together. We'll watch him as he wakes. We'll watch the night. They cried in shifts because someone has to keep asking the practical questions even when the only question most hearts carry at a time like that is how long. The PICU made room for us the way a house makes room for a new chair. You move a table, you change your angle on a window, and the whole place feels different for a while. He came up with a bandage like a sticker beneath his hair and lines that looked like new rules, which in a way they were. Blue popsicle, he murmured when his eyelids fluttered. The attending cleared it. The nurse, patron saint of bargains, got the ice. He held it like proof and took a delicate ceremony of a sip. I have witnessed first steps and first words and first smiles after surgeries. This was the first blue he'd had in a hospital, and it nearly unmade me. We test like we're afraid to ask. Squeeze? He did. Wiggle toes? He did, and then giggled because wiggling is inherently funny to 6-year-olds, and some of us never grow out of that truth. Track the sticker? He tracked. Say your favorite animal? Fox, he said, because this boy was consistent. And then we did not do the thing that might have satisfied our curiosity. We did not try to provoke a laugh. This is a habit of our profession we're weaning ourselves off of, poking the bruise to admire its color. Instead, we let him be the way you let a just-planted thing be. He fell asleep, and the room had opinions about alarms and charts and drip rates, and all of it sounded like the usual. What it did not sound like was laughter that wasn't laughter. His mother sat through the night holding a hand that was warm and slack the way post-anesthesia hands are. His father counted time by screens that refused to spare anyone. In the small hours, the nurse and I stood at the doorway and listened to the kind of quiet that has weight. The night remembered how to be quiet, she said. Lo, a sentence I planned to keep. By morning, the first people to write us from outside were the teacher and, unexpectedly, the school nurse. The teacher, classroom is quieter in the good way. The nurse, we never liked the word sillies. Should never have used it. Thank you for names. I carried my tablet into the room and read both messages aloud. The mother closed her eyes as if someone had finally taken a weight from her chest that she had been calling a purse. The junior tech from the monitoring unit, who had labeled the first captured event behavioral, came up on his break with big ears and bigger humility. He asked if he could say something to the parents. He did not make it about him. He said, "You were right. It was a seizure." The father put his hand on the young man's shoulder with the kind of grace that keeps institutions livable. "Thank you for saying it," he answered. Endocrine came and left without drama, numbers stable, a blip here and there that we expected as the body remembered its thermostat and its calendars. We wrote for follow-up the way you write reminders on your own fridge. I made a note about the hair on his arms that had sprouted without asking permission. We would keep an eye on timing because childhood is not a race, and we will not let it become one on our watch if we can help it. On the afternoon of day one, I walked back to the EMU and stood in the doorway long enough for the head nurse to look up. I told her to tell every parent within earshot that my door, literal, and inbox, less literal, remained open, that we would not use behavioral as a synonym for benign again, that sometimes the surface lies and the picture doesn't, that no one ever got in trouble for saying I don't know and getting a second set of eyes. She looked at my face in the small way that is as valuable as anything we get paid for and said, understood. By day 2, he came off the monitors with the casual indifference of children who assume wires are a phase adults go through. He walked slowly to the playroom with a physical therapist's hand as insurance and paused at a shelf of battered board games like he'd found the library after a hurricane. He drew a fox with a green crayon that was supposed to be blue and did not mind the mismatch. The nurse handed him a mirror and he looked at the bandage and said, "I have a comma, and I wanted to applaud the punctuation lesson." A comma, not a period, not an exclamation point. A pause, then more. Before we discharged him, I stood with the parents at the board and I erased gelastic with the kind of ceremony you wish you could bottle for other days. In its place I wrote quiet, then underneath it joy. "You get to keep both," I said, and felt myself blush because I do not typically allow myself pretty sentences. Sometimes medicine gives you a day when pretty is just true. We reviewed the maps. The surgeon showed the images before and after like a magician who does not insult his audience by pretending there was no trick, only skill. The dot was smaller in the way that mattered, less bossy. We signed papers and appointments and printed sets of instructions that would end up on refrigerators under magnets that say things like we can do hard things and this kitchen cleans itself, a lie, but one we all agree to whenever we can. At the elevator, the boy asked me, without preamble, will I laugh? Yes, I said. At jokes. At bad puns. At foxes wearing hats. He thought about this for a second that stretched. Good, he said, and leaned into his mother's side in the way small bodies telegraph gratitude without the word. Weeks later, his teacher wrote a note that made me cry at my desk between clinic rooms. Homework is neat again. He waits his turn to talk about planets. He still chooses blue whenever blue is an option. The school nurse added, he corrected a poster because toothbrushes don't have hands. He is, as always, right. We were counting smiles like vital signs. Endocrine follow-up was kind to us, The lab stayed stubbornly ordinary except for a nudge we treated with a tiny dose and a stubborn smile. He grew the way children grow, measured not just in inches, but in new jokes learned, in the number of times he did not startle at quiet. At home, a drawer held a neat stack of phone recordings labeled by date and time in the mother's hand. They almost threw them out on a Sunday, she told me later. We opened the trash and looked down and put them away again, she said. Not because we want them, because one day we may want to remember what it took to get to sleep. I told her there is no right ritual for old weather. Keep them, burn them, bury them, forget them in a box and find them when you move. All of it counts as reverence. The boy visited clinic once more, lighter on his feet than the time before. He brought Sunbeam a thank you drawing, which I taped against every sterile instinct to the side of our whiteboard for one afternoon before I scanned it and gave back the paper. It showed a fox holding a laser pointer, aiming at a little dot that said HA. The fox had ear protectors. The dot had a speech bubble with 3 ellipses and then nothing, which may be the best visual summary of our case I will ever get. In our monitoring unit, the junior tech printed a new set of labels for the event markers. He added uncertain as an option to the drop-down menu between seizure and artifact. It was a small change. It made me ridiculously happy. The last time I saw the family, it wasn't in a hospital. It was at a school open house, where the hallways smelled like crayons and bleach and many plans. The boy showed me the poster he'd made about planets. He had put a fox on Mars and told me, very seriously, that this was whimsical, a word he had learned and was auditioning for friendship. His laughter when I told a truly terrible pun, knock-knock quality, basement level, was loud and particular and shared. His mother's hand found mine for a second, the brief clasp people do when words would embarrass them. His father nodded the way men nod in a small town when the fence held through the winter. When I got home, I opened the folder in my desk that holds 2 notes. The first is the one from early training. Thank you for caring. Next time, please do better. I ran a thumb over it like a worry stone. The second is newer, printed from an email, and then hand-annotated by a teacher with a pen that leaks compassion, quieter in the good way. Under it, in my own handwriting, one line, surface leads lied. The picture didn't. There will be other children whose laughter hides something we have to chase. There will be nights that do not remember how to be quiet despite everything we throw at them. There will be families who keep drawers full of old storms because they don't know what else to do with weather. We will name uncertainty and we will ask for second looks and we will remind ourselves that not all smiles are joy and that our job, however we come to it, is to give meaning back. The next clinic morning, I wrote joy on the whiteboard in the corner where only the staff looks. Under it I wrote earned, not because children should have to earn it, but because we had. On my way to the EMU, I stopped by the tech station and said the sentence we don't say enough when no one's watching. You were right to change the label. Thank you. In the room down the hall, a new family was learning our machines by heart and pretending not to. I stood in the doorway and listened for a laugh and heard nothing. Sometimes the best medicine is the absence of a sound. On my way out that night, I passed the MRI suite and put my palm against the wall, a superstitious touch I've never admitted to and won't apologize for. Sunbeam, I said out loud to an empty corridor and a custodian mopping the floor said, without looking up, good name. I smiled and didn't write it down anywhere because some lines only matter in the moment. Outside, the moon followed my car in the way children insist it does. At a red light, I laughed at nothing, then at everything, then at the fact that jokes without dots are jokes again. When I got home, I did not open a drawer. I opened a window and let the quiet in.